Hello, Broncos. It's Miss Washington. Hope you're doing great and having a wonderful summer. I'm here to read a book to you called The Keeping Quilt by Patricia Polacco. It's one of my favorite authors. I love a lot of her stories, but this one's a neat one, and it's a lot about family. So I wanted to read it to you. This one, I'm going to show you the pictures. If you see on this one, this is a family, and they have the quilt right here. You're going to hear the story about that quilt. But there are immigrants, people coming over from another country on a boat, and they're being welcomed to America by Lady Liberty there on Ellis Island. And so they are coming in, and this is their story. So listen up. All right. When my great-grandma Anna came to America, she wore the same thick overcoat and big boots she had worn for farm work. But her family weren't dirt farmers anymore. In New York City, her father's work was hauling things on a wagon, and the rest of her family made artificial flowers all day. Everyone was in a hurry, and it was so crowded, not like in back home Russia. But all the same, it was their home, and most of their neighbors were just like them. So if you'll see, there she is, and she's the only one in color. You see that she's wearing this over her head, and all of them are here. It's very busy, okay? But that's the person who's writing this story is writing about her great-grandma Anna. When Anna went to school, English sounded to her like pebbles dropping into shallow water. Ch, ch, ch. In 6 months, she was speaking English, and her parents almost never learned, so she spoke for them too. The only thing she had left of back home Russia were her dress and the babushka she liked to throw up in the air while she was dancing. So here she is at school. And then here she is with her dress and her babushka. That's what she wears over her head. Okay? And her dress was getting too small. After her mother had sewn her a new one, she took her old dress and babushka. Then, from a basket of old clothes, she took Uncle Vladimir's shirt, Aunt Havela's night dress, and an apron of Aunt Natasha's. "We will make a quilt to help us always remember home," Anna's mother said. "It will be like having the family in back home Russia dance around us at night." So they were putting all of these things together in a quilt. And so it was. Anna's mother invited all the neighborhood ladies. They cut out animals and flowers from the scraps of clothing. Anna kept the needles threaded and handed them to the ladies as they needed them. The border of the quilt was made with Anna's babushka. So you see the red around the outside? That was made of the fabric she had around her head. And then all of the animals and flowers and things, they decorated from the inside with the other fabric. And all of them working together to do it. On Friday nights, Anna's mother would say prayers as they started the Sabbath, and the family ate challah and chicken soup. And the quilt was the tablecloth. So do you see? They're eating, and that's the tablecloth. Anna grew up and fell in love with great-grandpa Sasha. To show that she wanted to be her husband, he gave Anna a gold coin, a dried flower, and a piece of rock salt, all tied in a linen handkerchief. For the gold was for wealth, and the flower for love, and the salt so their lives would have flavor. She accepted the hanky, and then they were engaged. That's a certain way that they have a tradition of being engaged. So there they are, and they were picnicking and enjoying their engagement on the quilt. Under the wedding chuppah, Anna and Sasha promised each other love and understanding. After the wedding, the men and women celebrated separately. So do you see there are men here, the women over here dancing together, and the chuppah is like a covering. They stand under it to get married. So the quilt was used for that. When Grandma Carl was born, that was their child, Anna wrapped her daughter in a quilt to welcome her warmly into the world. Carl was given a gift of gold, flour, salt, and bread. Gold so she would never know poverty. A flower so she would always know love. Salt so her life would always have flavor, and bread so that she would never know hunger. And so here is Carl coming into the world. That was Anna and Sasha's child. Carl learned to keep the Sabbath and to cook and clean and do washing. Married you'll be someday, Anna told Carl. And there's the quilt that they're putting out after the laundry. Again, the quilt became a wedding chuppah, this time for Carl's wedding to Grandpa George. Men and women celebrated together this time, but they did not dance together. In Carl's wedding bouquet was gold, coin, bread, and salt. And so here They are, and again, the huppah is the covering as they got married. So you see, tradition is being passed down generation to generation. Carl and George moved into a farm in Michigan, and Great-Grandma Anna came to live with them. The quilt once again wrapped a new little girl, Mary Ellen. There you go. There's a new baby. Mary Ellen called Anna Lady Grandma, and she had grown very old and was sick a lot of the time. The quilt kept her legs warm, so now they're using it to keep Lady Grandma's legs warm. On Anna's 98th birthday, the cake was a quilt, a rich cake with raisins and candied fruit in it. A quilt is a cake. So there's her cake, and she turned 98. Look at that. Lived a long life. And the quilt is used as a tablecloth again. When Great-Grandma Anna died, prayers were said to lift her soul to heaven. My mother, Mary Ellen, was now grown up. So do you see there's a family, and families go through good things together, and they help each other when times are sad. When Mary Ellen left home, she took the quilt with her. When she became a bride, the quilt became her huppah, and for the first time, friends who were not Jews came to the wedding. My mother wore a suit, but in her bouquet were gold, bread, and salt. So things were changing as times changed. But here they have some of the same traditions still. They're trying to hold on to those. So there's the huppah again to cover the new couple. The quilt then welcomed me, Patricia, into the world. That's the author of our book. And it was a tablecloth for my first birthday party. So do you see? She got wrapped in it as well. And then she used it as a tablecloth for her first birthday party. At night, I would trace my fingers around the edges of each animal on the quilt before I went to sleep. I told my mother stories about the animals on the quilt. And she told me whose sleeve had made the horse, whose apron had made the chicken, whose dress had made the flowers, and whose babushka went around the edge of the quilt. These are all of her family members, so she's getting to hear about them. The quilt was a pretend cape when I was in the bull ring, or sometimes a tent in the steaming Amazon jungle. So do you see that she got to tell stories about the animals on them, and her mother told her about her family members that put the quilt together. And then here she just got to play pretend, make a tent and she's in it, or make a cape. So she has a great imagination. At my wedding to Enzo Mario, men and women danced together, and in my bouquet were gold, bread, and salt, and a sprinkle of wine, so I would always know laughter. Now look, do you see how times have changed? They're all dancing together, but they still do have the huppah and some of the traditions of what's in her bouquet. And as we end, she said, 20 years ago, I held Tracy Denise, which is her daughter, in the quilt for the first time. Someday she too will leave home, and she will take the quilt with her. So look, this is now our author's daughter. And so she took a story from her own family, a precious item that was this quilt, and wrote a whole story about it. And I love how they shared some of their family traditions and just the things that were special, all the different milestones in their life that this quilt was a part of. Now, I want you to think about what things that your family does together and what traditions you're passing down, or maybe there's some that you could start, or some special items that you might get passed down to you one day. So I love that, and I love that she just passed a different story on. This is some people coming from Russia, and they're sharing some of their traditions with us. So The Keeping Quilt by Patricia Polacco. I hope you loved it, and I just hope maybe you can look up some other books that she's written. She has lots of, some that are very touching, some that are funny. So look for some more of her writing, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer. Bye, guys.